Challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic have prompted Boston City Councilors to shift their focus. They've been addressing concerns over public health, but also struggles with language barriers and difficulties for small businesses that rely on deliveries. To tell us what that means in District 2 in South Boston, the South End, in Chinatown, is City Councilor Ed Flynn. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Chris, it's good to be with you.
Councilor, I picture District 2 on a day like today is maybe a walk around Castle Island, enjoying the breeze, but this year is going to be a little different. What do you want people to look out for?
Yes, this year it will be different. It's still critical that residents and visitors follow the guidelines, which include wearing a face covering, social or physical distancing, continuing to wash your hands with soap and water, avoid large crowds and gatherings, and staying inside. Unfortunately, it's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful weekend, but the only way to really beat this coronavirus is by following the guidelines established by the public health professionals, and that's what we need to do.
Of course, I've done this myself, going to Castle Island. I see people bringing children. Sometimes families come, so it means uncles, aunts, and cousins as well. A lot of tight gathering. Do you think people can sort of control that enough?
I think it's very difficult to do that anywhere where there's large crowds, or there's a location people like to gather. They tend to gather as a small group, and so we do have large crowds at the various parks across the state, including Castle Island. But again, really the only way to deal with the coronavirus is unfortunately staying home, practice social distancing. If you are out, you are allowed to go out and get some exercise, and you know, you can still do social things with your family members from your house, but it's still important to social distance, physical distancing. That's how we're going to keep the numbers down and get back to a place where we were before, and that takes a lot of hard work, a lot of discipline. But as a city, we're heading in the right direction. We're doing that, but it takes everybody to be part of it.
I don't think anybody expects a sudden return to what happened on St. Patrick's Day weekend, when there were some bars that were very crowded in the city, had to crack down on that. But on a regular basis, you're going to have small businesses, even food stores or cafes or something. And when people are going up and down Broadway, for example, is there going to be enough room, or should there be some thinking about creating more space for people to have safe mobility?
We're thinking about that now. The state is establishing guidelines for the opening of restaurants, and the city is also working on a plan to make sure that they implement it with public health guidelines as part of it. It's critical and important that we open our restaurants, our small businesses, but it's also critical that we continue to follow the guidelines of public health professionals so that we can reduce the numbers of COVID-19. But as it relates to small restaurants, there will be probably some sidewalk seating available, and also probably potentially closing off of streets and having some tables on the streets. But I'm also concerned, and I've been talking to city officials and Boston police about pedestrian safety related issues. As the city slowly opens, it's critical that people that are driving respect the speed limit. We need strict enforcement from Boston Police on the current speeding laws. I'd also like to see a reduction, even temporary, of the speed limit from 25 to 20, but also some infrastructure improvements to the roads, to the sidewalks, with Vision Zero in mind. Pedestrian safety is still a top priority for me. and for the residents of my district, certainly.
Well, you and some of your colleagues are trying to help some of the small businesses with the cost of takeout or delivery services, I should mention. And what exactly should be done as far as limiting the burden for businesses with that?
I think we need to help cut the red tape for restaurant owners. They play an integral part in our city and in our neighborhoods. They're active, they're involved. They sponsor our Little League teams and various charities. They're our neighbors, they're bartenders or waitresses or cooks or small business owners. So they're an integral part of the neighborhood. We need to help them get back on their feet. They've had a terrible time over the last several months. But the Boston way is when someone's on the ground and knocked down is to offer a helping hand, get them back up on their feet. So that's what we're trying to do on the city level, is making sure that we provide the right resources and support to small businesses and restaurants alike, especially.
You and Councilor Flaherty have also been looking into some kind of additional emergency medical and even Boston fire presence in parts of the district, especially around Fort Point and the Seaport district. Why is that needed?
Well, the South Boston waterfront and the Fort Point area, their population has grown significantly over the last 10, 15 years. It's a neighborhood now. There's residents that are living there. But what is lacking is a police station, a fire station, and an EMS station. I've talked to the city officials, I've talked to the mayor, and I'm confident eventually we will get a fire presence and an EMS presence in the South Boston waterfront. That's certainly one of my top priorities, including a public library, as State Senator Nick Collins has advocated for. But we view the South Boston waterfront and the Fort Point as neighborhoods where people live, they pay their taxes, they're involved in the community, and they deserve the same level of basic city services as does any other neighborhood.
One of the other issues you're concerned about, and this is something that's been really happening nationally and maybe fed by national leadership, and that is the rise in either discrimination or even hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans. What have you been hearing from people in the district?
I've heard from residents throughout the city, especially in the Asian community, Asian American Pacific Islander community as well. There is discrimination. We see a lot of cases across the country. We see violence. We see intimidation, discrimination against the AAPI community. I'm working with the Chinese Progressive Association and other civil rights organizations across the city on this issue. I've focused on this issue almost from day one since this pandemic started. We filed several resolutions on the Boston City Council in support of the Asian American community, against discrimination against the Asian American community. I've also been on several calls with leaders in New York and Boston and across the country about the growing violence and intimidation against the Asian American community. This is something I'm going to focus on this upcoming week and talk more about that at length, about the terrible acts of violence against the Asian community across the country and steps on how to address it. We need to document every case. We need to investigate every case and prosecute every case. Discrimination has no place in our country, and we're seeing a lot of that happening across our country, and it's important for everybody to stand up for our immigrant neighbors as well, making sure that we treat them with respect, dignity, and empathy.
Of course, another thing of concern, especially for people coming into your district to go to work, is service on the MBTA. They want to feel that it's safe to ride the T. How confident are you right now that that's going to be there when people need it?
I'm confident the MBTA is doing everything they can right now to address some of the difficulties that they've experienced. The MBTA hasn't been working over the last several months as it normally would. So I know they had some time to make improvements. They're thinking of ways to make the bus and the trains safer, especially public health wise for riders. Many people, or most people, actually use the MBTA to get to work, to drop their kids off to school. So having a reliable MBTA system is critical. And that's something that we're going to continue to work on to make sure we make improvements to the MBTA, so that it's an effective way to get to work and from work and get to your kids to school as well. So it plays a critical role in the Boston economy, the greater Boston and across the state. So we're going to do everything we possibly can to make improvements to the MBTA, our bus services as well. Rapid bus transportation, bus lanes are also part of the solution.